All right. Good evening, everybody. Along with Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, this is Steven Rabinowitz, and we are here for another edition of On the Sports Lines. It's our NFL preview, but there's so much more to talk about. But before we get started, let's remember the 5 people we lost this week in the sports and technically entertainment world. We lost Cliff Robinson, a very good NBA player and UConn star. He was gone way too soon, I think 51 years old. We lost Lute Olson, one of the best college basketball coaches in my lifetime. We lost Chadwick Boseman, who played Jackie Robinson in the movie 42, which a lot of people loved. I loved it. Also played Black Panther, of course. Again, gone at the ridiculously young age of 43 or 42. I don't remember what happened. 43. We also lost John Thompson, who is one of the most influential coaches in college basketball history at the age of 78. And then yesterday, in a gut punch to the rest of the world, we learned of the passing of Tom Seaver, the man who Vin Scully called on Twitter the best right-handed pitcher we've ever seen in our lifetime. Moment of silence for everybody. All right, moving on, guys. I want to mention something about our show last week. We got a comment from a person who was watching from around the world, because I boost sometimes this show for people to watch, and gave us a death threat. Gave us a death threat for going against Trump. So, and I appreciate all views. If anybody ever posts death threats on our page or on our videos that are watching, I will delete them, and I will make sure you never watch this show again. Okay.
Rabbi, was this on our YouTube channel, or was this?
It was on. I'm sorry, it was on our Facebook page. But again, I will delete them and make sure that you get called out. But until then, let's move on. All right. So much to unpack this week. We'll get into our NFL preview with Joe Tufaro, talking about Giants and NFC East in just a moment. But first, there's another thing that came through on the wire today. The Brooklyn Nets have hired a brand new head coach, and it's a head coach that's never actually been a head coach, in the form of Steve Nash, 2-time MVP, star for the Phoenix Suns. It's a shocking hire, but the good news is, and we're going to put this all in context, the Nets kept the interim head coach who really kept them afloat in the bubble, and Jacques Vaughn has made them the highest paid assistant in the NBA to accept the demotion, so to speak. There is a whole lot to unpack here, and I'm still stunned by it. Jay, how about you?
I got to tell you, hiring a head coach with no previous head coaching experience is not unheard of in the NBA. But, with rumors coming out of Brooklyn that KD and Kyrie wanted an experienced coach or a big name, I guess it's not a surprise that the Nets went with the latter when they couldn't get the former, as GM Sean Marks was unable to pry Greg Popovich away from San Antonio.
I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
There is a relationship there. Now, here's the thing, and speaking of relationships, Marks and Nash were teammates in Phoenix, and according to Warriors GM Steve Kerr, who was the Suns GM at the time, Warriors head coach Steve Kerr, rather, the two were very tight. So, we know that the relationship between a head coach and a GM is very important. So Nash comes in with that from the jump. Nash also comes in with a pre-existing relationship with Durant from their time in Golden State, where Nash was a player development consultant and spent a lot of time working with KD. Durant's time with the Warriors featured plenty of sessions with Nash, 2 of them working after a practice or before a game, going through some intricate and fluid drills with full concentration, often in slow motion. We all know that Nash has an impressive basketball IQ. We know he's cool under pressure and, easygoing demeanor. But he was a very competitive guy as a player. So I think that should make for a nice pairing with Irving and Durant. One of the best point guards of his generation. He's played with the likes of Shaq, Kobe, Dwight Howard, the latter 2 in LA with the Lakers. So he does understand the dynamic of star players in big markets. You add all of that to the fact that he's a Hall of Famer and widely considered one of the best to ever play the position. That should garner instant respect from Kyrie. I say should. Kyrie, you never know.
No.
And here's the thing, guys. I would like this hire a lot less if the Nets didn't make the smart move of retaining Jacques Vaughn to be Nash's lead assistant. Look, the respect Vaughn earned from the players in his short time as interim head coach, and how he's able to take a team that was missing most of its top-level talent and make it competitive in the seeding games and in the round one playoff series against the Raptors will go a long way to keeping continuity and helping Nash ease into things. You have to figure the Nets will continue to try and surround Nash with as many experienced assistants as they can. What's going to be interesting is if Nash retains assistant coach Adam Harrington, who Nash also knows from his time in Golden State, because back then Harrington was Durant's trainer. Now, also according to Kerr, Nash's communication skills are off the charts, and because of his humility and confidence in his knowledge, Kerr believes that Nash just has a really unique approach to training that he developed over the course of his career. Nash and the Warriors' current director of sports medicine and performance, Rick Celebrini, developed this philosophy as they went along while Steve was playing, and then over the 5 years Nash was at Golden State as that consultant. Built the whole program, and it's still being used by the Warriors today. Guys, the last time the Nets had a team that was expected to be a contender in the East, they hired a former point guard who had no coaching experience. Didn't go as well as they'd hoped. Here, the second time might be the charm. Besides, the other members of the, quote, point guards who became head coaches with no coaching experience club have done pretty good overall, and that's Doc Rivers, the aforementioned Jason Kidd, Isaiah Thomas, Mark Jackson, and the aforementioned Steve Kerr. Look, if the big pieces of the Nets roster are all back in 2021 and they're healthy, Nash has a great foundation to work with. But he's also going to have those great expectations. Brooklyn was going to be a team to watch even before Nash came on board. Now they'll even be more of a must-see. The question is Nash up to the task? I'm gonna be the optimist here and say I think he is.
You know, it's a surprise. I mean, I don't think anyone was expecting this. You heard a lot of names getting thrown out there, like Ty Lue was among those names, and of course Greg Popovich, but I don't think he was leaving San Antonio.
Mark tried to pry him away. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, other than to a golf course, I think Greg Popovich was probably leaving the Spurs. But other than that, he wasn't coming to Brooklyn. This was a surprise because I wonder what kind of offense Steve Nash is going to run, because you have in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, you have two very ISO-heavy superstars who love having the ball in their hands. And we know Steve Nash is one of the best point guards in the game, but what made him so good, particularly with those Phoenix Suns teams, is ball movement and moving out the basketball and running in an up-tempo style. So you wonder what kind of a coaching style is he going to bring to the table. You think about this. When Steve Kerr took over for Mark Jackson Golden State, a lot of people were expecting him to run something of a triangle offense, which he played in as a member of the Chicago Bulls, and he went to more of a motion style offense that fit more of the personnel he had, particularly the splash brothers of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, where you see them move around the ball and move off screens when they don't have the basketball.
Well, so, Anthony, that offense was similar to the one he played under Popovich in San Antonio. So it's not like the only offense he ever played in was Phil's triangle.
Yeah, but, I mean, when you think Steve Kerr is a player, I mean, you kind of forget that he's won championships in San Antonio because he's so synonymous with Michael Jordan and those 90 Bulls teams.
Fair.
But in the case of, and like I said, and also you got to keep in mind, too, Steve Nash played with one of the more up-tempo, schizophrenic coaches in NBA history, and Don Nelson as well, in Dallas. So it'd be interesting to see what coaching philosophy he brings to the table. We know he's a great defensive player, so he's gonna really stress defense, particularly in the case of Kyrie Irving, who can be in and out at times on the defensive end. But what's more going to be interesting is going to be how did he mend those two egos? I mean, when you think of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, you think of two of the biggest players in the game, but two of the most temperamental. We know Kyrie has his moments. He has his moments, and Kevin Durant, he does come off as a guy that even if you pacify, you wonder if he's ever happy, because he's a guy who has like 1,000 phony Twitter accounts and answer trolls and just all kinds of things. So I think if Steve Kerr can get them to focus on basketball and not the outside stuff as they've been prone to kind of get sucked into, I think it'll be a good start. So like playing in Brooklyn, like it's hard to take. Like I said, like when the Nets has always it's been kind of the spotlight team, going into next season anyway, because they'll get those guys back and have a full set of roster. But keeping Jacques Vaughn was kind of, I think it was a good move because
no brainer.
Without question, I think it was a great move. I mean, you see what he did in the bubble. Basically, a team that was thrown together last minute and they went 5-3, and locking up a playoff spot. So Jacques Vaughn being staying on as the head assistant coach. It's a smart move by Brooklyn all around. And Brooklyn has, since Sean Moss has taken over, he's made some really good moves and trying to turn this net team around from, kind of purgatory they put themselves in with that draft night trade 7 years ago.
Yeah, that draft night trade. Well, the Jason Kidd move, I remember that. I don't equate that to this that much because Kidd had a history with the Nets, and I don't think it's going to be like this. First of all, if Steve Nash fails as Nets head coach, I heard the New York Red Bulls or NYCFC would be a perfect fit for him. Doesn't have to go far.
No.
I used to hate this move like crazy. I hated this move this morning when I saw it like crazy because it's like no experience, has really only been on the GM side and the personnel side. But more and more, the retaining of Vaughn, obviously, the fact that the Nets this was kind of the Nets' target this whole entire time. They were trying to convince Nash to become this team's head coach. I kind of love it more and more because I think Nash can provide a new dimension for this team. I don't think he's going to run a lot of D'Antoni stuff because this team is not a fast team at all, especially when you bring back KD and Kyrie.
And outside of Harris, it's not like they're loaded with a bunch of
and LeVert
down 3-point shooters either.
Yeah, and LeVert. Well, Harris is going to be their number one priority to keep. LeVert's not going to fit in with this team. He's probably not back in 2021.
Who?
Karis LeVert.
No, who did you say won't be back?
He won't be back in 2021. He does not fit this team at all. He's kind of a guy who.
I don't know about that.
He needs the ball, Jay.
I don't know.
But here's the thing. He's been in situations where he has not been the primary option, and he's fit in as a role player. Because remember, when Dinwiddie was running things, LeVert was second, and
I agree, but this is a completely different story because LeVert has now shown he's gonna. If you get something for him, I think you have to get what you can for him.
Maybe, but I happen to agree with the people who think the Nets don't need to find a number 3 because between Dinwiddie and LeVert, you got one.
You got a number 2 with Dinwiddie and LeVert, but we know too many scores don't match. But that's against the sideboard. That is beside the point completely. However, I do think Nash is also a good vocal voice for this team because I think he can handle the media well. I think there's going to be a ton of attention on this team in 2021.
Oh, yeah.
And I think for the role, I think Nash is a huge name. I think Jacques will probably do a lot of the preparing. And I think Jacques has a good relationship with this team that he can help Nash out tremendously. Again, hated it in the beginning, but more and more, I kind of love this move. It's surprising. So can you believe, guys, in 1 week it's back to football? Holy crap.
Crazy, right?
Yes, because of the elimination of the preseason, the first NFL action any of us will see live in the summer or fall of 2020 will be next Thursday when the Texans face the Chiefs. But, of course, we need to start with the locals. And let's start with the Giants, who are coming off another horrid season, the 4-12. They're looking to make a statement under new Giants head coach Joe Judge. The Patriots special teams coach is coming to New York. For a look at Big Blue's latest reboot, we welcome back Joe Tufaro, man of many blogs, but most importantly, the man you can find on Twitter at ToughDan. Good evening, Joe.
Joseph, how are you?
Good, guys. How are you?
Hey, what's going on?
Good to have you back, man.
All right. So, as usual, Joe, we ask the questions, you provide the answers, starting with Jay.
All right, Joe. We've ever since December 31st, New Year's Eve, when you texted me and said, put it down, the Giants will draft Daniel Jones. You and I have spent the better part of coming up on 2 years now microscoping this kid and watching his development with optimistic eyes. Had a decent rookie season, 24 TD passes in 12 starts. Also, the downside, the fumbles, the interceptions, the whole ball security thing. He's got a new head coach again, a new offensive coordinator. So this is his third different offense in the last 3 years. Not a lot of continuity, not any comfort. He's starting from scratch. He's looked okay in training camp, though seeing him fumble in a scrimmage where he can't actually be hit does kind of raise the whole ball security thing again. But I don't think it's cause for panic. What have you seen in camp that's given you it's fueled your optimism, and what are you hoping to see in terms of the leap from year 1 to year 2 from this kid?
Yeah, I think he started with his off-season program. He's gotten to be a much bigger guy. He's a little bit more solid. We all know rookies never make it through the first year without getting some sort of injury, some sort of hitting a brick wall, which he did. He got hurt there for a couple of games, and then he watched in the beginning. And so, he comes back, he comes into camp, he's healthy, he's a little bit bigger, he's a little bit stronger. He worked on all of these things that they gave him, no matter who the coach is. Every coach in the league would have given him the same advice about holding on to the ball more. So it really doesn't matter who his quarterback coach is or who his offensive coordinator is or head coach. Although his head coach is extremely detail-oriented, and that they worked on this every day. And the biggest part about training camp, if you guys had paid some attention to what they were doing out there, they said, the one thing you noticed is nobody was ever just standing around. He had 4 different fields going at all times. So he got a lot of work on whatever it is they needed him to work on, whether it's footwork or ball security or whatever. What I look for, and it's funny, they asked Dave Gettleman this question yesterday, what would he consider successful? And it's, again, he is there now for the first year without Eli. So it's his team, it's Saquon's team. How do they coexist in that leadership role? How do they bring this team along? How does he handle himself on the field? Understanding that we all now expect him as fans to play for the next 15 years straight without missing a game, because that's what the last guy did.
Just that expectation?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's kind of what you do when you pick a franchise quarterback. You expect him to play. And when you had the last guy do that, you're going to be a little bit hurt if he stubs his toe and he misses 2 weeks, if he becomes a baseball player all of a sudden and doesn't show up. So, you want him to be out there. You want him to be the leader. You want him to show the way that things are going to go and to take this offense, be the leader, be the guy that moves guys around, gets them into the right positions. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for leadership. I'm looking for – I think, Jay, you and I have seen he's got the end of the game stuff already, the comeback against Tampa. He'll stand in and take the heat. He'll take the hits. He's a tough kid. He's a smart kid, so I'm not worried about him learning in offense. Brought to you by a guy from Princeton, so I'm pretty sure they're on the same.
Guy teaching a guy from Duke should be interesting, right?
Exactly. So I think they're
win the Class Medal Awards, that's for sure.
They're up here as far as where they talk. It's not drawing things up in the dirt. So
Garrett's been impressed with him.
Yeah, and I think
side of the game.
Yeah, and I think that's what you want to see, right? You want to see him make the right checks. Which Eli did from the beginning. You want him to do that, but again, it's his team now, and I think that's where you see the progress.
All right, Joe. So running back, obviously the Giants are completely set with Saquon Barkley. He is a franchise running back. If he stays healthy, you get really good numbers from him, and you get a number 1 running back who is a 3-down back. However, the wide receiver depth chart, there's so much promise in there. And let's even include Evan Ingram if he stays healthy, which should be his full name, Evan Ingram, if he stays healthy. But I want you to tell me who Daniel Jones is going to look the most to in 2020. Where do you see this depth chart leading up to?
Yeah, and Rabbi, it's funny. We talk, and I'm a little bit of an old school guy, but I'm also one that doesn't like labels on stuff. So when you look at the depth chart and you go, oh, okay, so how could they play 5 wide? Because if Golden Tate's not healthy, which at the moment he's not, who's going to be out there? You have Sterling Shepard. You have Darius Slayton, who came on very well at the end of last year, has looked great in training camp. Obviously, he's a guy that you're going to look for deep balls. You have Corey Coleman. But you got to look at this team and say, oh, you want to go 5 wide? We'll put Shepard and Slayton and Corey Coleman. And by the way, we can also put a running back out there.
And when Tate gets back,
you have Deion Lewis, you have Wayne Gallman, you have Saquon Barkley. Oh, and we could put Evan Ingram out wide where no one can cover him. So I think you have a lot of options on this team. And Joe Judge has said this from day one. Every week is going to be set up differently as an offense. It's going to be, we're going to take advantage of the situations we're given. So I don't think depth charts mean much to him. I think he has formations that they're going to use. They're going to have 4 guys, 5 guys, 3 guys. You're going to have 3 running backs in the game at a time. You're going to have 3 tight ends in the game. And you're going to be able to move guys all around. Again, you put Barkley on one side and Evan Ingram on the other side in the 2 slots, and then you put Corey Coleman and Slayton out there. Again, you just put out more guys than they can cover in certain situations, depending on the teams that they're playing and who that they're going to feature that week. So I don't think he's worried about, here's my 3 guys, here are my top 2 guys. I think Daniel Jones is going to look a lot for Evan Ingram. I think Sterling Shepard, obviously, he's always been a big fan of his. I think Slayton's the deep guy. And then, you have 2 other tight ends on this team that you can play at the same time as Evan Ingram. Put him out and put the other guys in. So it's all going to depend on how much time he has. But I think he's going to have plenty of places to go with the ball. And that's going to be the interesting part of this, is how many different formations can he come up with? How many different offensive weapons can you stick out there at a time in the situation and keep them on track and keep them moving the ball forward? So I think there's a lot of talent, as you said, Rabbi, in the room, in that Giants receivers room, because Corey Coleman's looked good, C.J. Board's looked good, David Sills looked good, Austin Mack has hung around and made some catches here and there. Tate will come back at some point and be healthy and hopefully be himself. And don't forget, the reason they put this group together the way they did, letting OBJ walk, was they wanted a tough group that can block downfield, because you have to block for Saquon 20 yards down the field, because he's going to still be running. So you don't want the guys that come off the line on the running play and play with the cornerback. You want a guy who's going to go down and block and be a real decoy, and those are the guys you have with Tate and with Sterling Shepard.
Anthony?
Hey Joe, every year, especially in April when the NFL releases the team schedules, we overanalyze, we look at the games, look at the schedule, we try to dissect, okay, where the wins are going to come, where's the loss going to come. Look at the New York Giants schedule. They got one of the toughest schedules thanks to playing the NFC East, and now this year the AFC North Division. In your opinion, which game on that schedule is going to be the toughest, and which ones may be the easiest as far as getting a guaranteed W in the win column?
You're gonna hate my answer, because I'm not really gonna answer that question. I think in this crazy season that we're in, with no preseason games, a brand new coaching staff, a brand new defense, basically, the entire back end of the defense being rebuilt from linebackers to cornerbacks and safeties. I think the toughest game they play is going to be every game until they get a win. Because they're going to be under some pressure, and they're going to have to figure out how to play together, and they're going to have to figure out how to hopefully win late and how to finish ball games and that kind of stuff. So I think opening night, with no fans in the building, figuring out how you're going to get your defense pumped up to play against, who knew Ben Roethlisberger would be back, Jay?
I did.
Playing against a veteran quarterback like that, who's been through it all, who's tough, who doesn't need anything to hype him up.
And that defense.
And so I think any of those games, because if you lose that and then you go to Chicago, well, I don't know who's playing the quarterback for Chicago because they probably don't know yet either. So you can't – but, again, if you're on that track where you're 0-1 and you got to go on the road now and you got to learn how to play, and I think every game is going to be the toughest game of the season until they get that first win.
And they have it.
Yeah. And the other thing, Anthony, that we always say that this is something I always believe in because I do think we over-dissect strength of schedule from last year to this year when the entire rosters changed for some teams and coaching staffs change. I think the statement when you say it's not who you play, it's when you play them, because I know we're going to talk about the NFC East later on, and you talk about a team like the Eagles who have no wide receivers at this point. Well, suppose another guy gets hurt, or suppose somebody doesn't come back, or if they lose their quarterback and they get to the back quarterback. So I don't know if you just went by schedule to give you an answer. If Joe Burrow's playing in Cincinnati and it's week 12, which is probably more weeks than he's ever played in his life in his football season, I think that might be a place where you could at least look for getting a win in Cincinnati. I don't know who's playing quarterback for Washington. If it's Dwayne Haskins, I'm going to give you both of those games as winnable games, but it's the NFC East. And you can't ever count a game as an easy game in that division. So I think until they figure out who they are, I'm not really worried about who they're playing because they need to buy into what they're doing and they need to figure it out. And so every game is going to be tough until they put a win or two under their belts.
And for that first win, they have San Francisco and the Rams back and at LA weeks 3 and 4.
Yeah, but Jared Goff took a huge step backwards last year. And
that game was in LA. If that game was home, I would give them more of a chance. But having to go West Coast, especially in a year like this, not easy
and also
not the year to play the NFC West.
No, but also, they're not going to have fans there either in LA. So that could help a little bit of not being in a hostile environment as much. I actually may be doing the chain gang that week, but it'll be interesting to see how all that goes. But no, I agree with you, Rabbi. It's a weird thing, just this whole thing about going to Dallas that's going to have fans, going to San Francisco, going to LA that won't have fans, and how all that's going to affect your team is going to be very odd.
Yeah.
And I think one last thing I just want to make point of. I think the NFL made a huge mistake by when college football decided we're probably not going to play college football early in the year. They should have taken all their Thursday games and moved them to Saturday.
Yes. Thank you, Joe.
It made, capture the audience for the weekend, but also stop. Somebody said yesterday, if you lose a player on Sunday to an injury, just to get a guy in, go through the protocols, get quarantined, he may not be able to play for 2 weeks, let alone get him to play the next week. So you're going to have the practice squad guys are going to be the only guys you're going to be able to bring up.
Yep.
And so it's the whole dynamic change. And to have guys playing on Thursdays right away is nuts. So I think that was a big mess on their part.
Agreed, Joe.
A lot of people thought that the NFL would easily do that too. And then the ACC, SEC, and Big 12 decided to be a little bullheaded and keep their seasons alive. And I think that's really the only reason they kept their seasons alive, because they did not want to cede themselves to the NFL for the rest of the year. All right, so Joe is going to stay on with us for the next segment, and I hate to be the annoying person, but according to Fox, nothing brings in the ratings like the NFC East. You can have the Washington football team and Philadelphia both be 0-8, and it'll still get Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Anyway, let's preview the Giants' competition in the division for 2020, and then Joe will tell us whether we're right or wrong, and hopefully will agree with us. I don't want him to agree with Chad. Anthony, you get your favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow, the Dallas Cowboys. You know what? The biggest change in the offseason is actually a head coach. I mean, we just talked about the aforementioned Jason Garrett, but he was dismissed after another 8-8 season, and they bring in head coach Mike McCarthy, who after being in Green Bay for so long, winning a Super Bowl, taking a year off, and now he is the guy. in Dallas, and he's got a loaded team. He pretty much is inherited an offensive firepower team similar to the way he left behind in Green Bay. You have the quarterback, Dak Prescott, who threw for over 4,000 yards. He has Zeke Elliott, who's an all-pro running back. Look at the weapons he has outside, the wide receiver with Amari Cooper and Blake Jarwin as a tight end, with Jason Witten moving on, along with Michael Gallup. But one of the things that we talked about this on draft night, drafting CeeDee Lamb and giving another offensive weapon, that should be interesting. And Mike McCarthy is known for being an offensive coach. But then when I look at also on defense, they get Lathan Van Der Esch back after he was injured last year. That should help out DeMarcus Lawrence, who kind of tailed off towards the end of last season after he got that big deal. He only had, a half a sack in the last 5 games. But when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, and Joe, I'll definitely throw this question to you. It's not the fact that they have the most talent. They clearly have the most talent of any team in the NFC East. The question of whether it comes together. I mean, they even added Trayvon Diggs, who has a brother playing in Buffalo, and Stephon Diggs, to help out the secondary. So this team is loaded top to bottom as far as talent. But when you finish 8-8 and you're missing the playoffs every other season, and then when you do make the playoffs, you're even winning a playoff game or you're one and done. What is with this team that for some reason that the talent is there, but it doesn't quite come together? And Jason Garrett couldn't bring that together. And my question to you, Joe, is, in your opinion, is Mike McCarthy the guy who can bring this star-driven team together and maybe take it to the next level, and they could be the Super Bowl contenders that, prognosticators expect them to be year in and year out?
No.
Next question. No.
I like it.
Tell us how you really feel, Joe.
I think, first of all, I think they have a lot of injuries in their secondary right now, which will be concerning to them. They got 4 guys that are questionable out of 6. So, again, depends on how everybody, this whole conversation is about who stays healthy and who, doesn't get hurt, as we know. It always
and
is.
they down Joe McCoy, too, by the way. He ruptured his crowd. He's done for the year. He was a free agent signing in the offseason.
Yeah, so, again, it depends on who's going to actually be there and stuff. I always think this team, from starting in 2007, believe it or not, this team has always been – Rabbi knows what I'm going to say. This team has always been oversold by ownership and by the media.
2007 trade, 1996.
Yeah, and in 2007, when they won the division and got the bye week, they all took the week off, as we all know, and they were going to throw their hats in the ring against everybody and walk to the Super Bowl. Well, they wound up losing to the Giants, and the next year, and at the end of the year, I always remember this. This is my favorite story about them. Wade Phillips was the coach, and after the game, he said, "Wow, the best team lost. We are so much better than that team, and we have more talent." And guess what they did all summer long was nothing. Nobody practiced. Nobody put anything. They didn't use it as a stepping stone. It didn't make them hungrier. It didn't say, boy, we really have to play better to win this thing. They went in saying, oh, we're the best team again. And they didn't make the playoffs. Actually finished with a horrible record the next year, and then he gets fired, and they bring in a couple of different guys. But even the way they went through the coaching search this time, right? They didn't even fire Jason Garrett, where they were still interviewing other guys to take his place. So it's always more about ownership. It's always more about the hype of this team. Dak Prescott wants $400 million. This guy wants this much money. This guy wants this much money. It's never about, can we go out there and play the best game we can play and be the toughest team on the field. And I think, you can talk about how many yards Dak Prescott throws for, but he throws a lot of bad decisions in big spots. He's a lot like Brett Favre and those guys who have made bad decisions at bad times. Sam Darnold, guys like that who are supposed to be so good that don't take that next step. And with the two of those guys trying to coexist, with Elliott and Prescott, they don't exactly work together well. It's always oh, we should be running the ball more. Oh, we should be throwing the ball more. Now, I agree. He's got much better weapons, Anthony, this now than ever before. Because if Cooper's healthy, which right now he's not, but if he's healthy, and you bring in a CD Lamb, who, again, is not going to be what he was at Oklahoma, where every week he's going to have 10 great plays. He's going to have a few here and there because, again, he's a rookie. He's going to be learning, and he's probably going to miss a few games to some stupid injury, and he'll make a mistake somewhere. He'll run a wrong route somewhere. But it's because it's a learning curve. But I do believe – I agree with you. They're stacked on offense. It's a matter of putting this team together, and I don't think – Mike McCarthy had some of the greatest teams in the league for years and never won a damn. He won one Super Bowl, and again, he's in a lot of playoff games, was in a lot of championship games. But again, you're only as good as those people that perform for you, right? He lost also two games to the New York Giants in NFC Championship games with Brett Favre and with Aaron Rodgers. So. It's still a team thing, and I don't think Dallas ever builds themselves together as a team and plays to their best. They're always a bunch of individuals that want to go out and talk about how great they are, and the ownership lets them do that because they do the same thing. And the media just hypes it up the same way as, let's start figuring out who we're playing in the Super Bowl from preseason instead of working this week by week and seeing how good you can get and seeing who you can beat. So I don't think he's going to make that big a difference. I don't think he's a guy who brings the team together. I think he's a great tactician. I think he's going to have a good offense. But he's still got who he's got. And until the decision-making changes a little bit at that offense, at that quarterback position, they're still going to struggle at times.
And don't forget Jerry Jones is like always the X factor. You have no idea when he'll say something incredibly outrageous, and suddenly it's a shadow cast over that team going into the next game.
And Anthony, we always talk about they pick up a lot of reclamation products, like Oakland used to do, but they pick up a lot of guys who've been in, but they usually pick up guys who've been in serious trouble, like legal trouble, not that they didn't want to play for a coach or guys like that. They're not just bad actors on the field where a guy gets in a fight all the time and he just needs like a Bill Belichick to say, hey, you just have to do your job and we'll do it. Jerry goes out and picks some really bad characters up, and that always – you bring that into a team constantly. And, again, those guys aren't team players. They're all about themselves. It's all about how can I get paid. I'm going to sit out. I'm going to do this. Every one of their guys sits out to get a new contract. Every one of their guys, big guys who's ever gotten a contract, has had to say – oh, I guess I'm not signing my tender. I'm going to sit out. I'm going to do this and do. That's all that they do. So again, bunch of individuals. I'm not picking on them as people. I'm just saying they treat their players as if they're all individuals, and they just keep bringing guys in and saying, "Oh, go play, go play, go play." Well, the coach has got to be sitting there going, "Hey, I'd like to make some of these decisions sometimes," and I think that hurts them a lot.
Agreed.
Yeah, and Dak Prescott bargain basement.
Yeah.
By the way. That's my new All right. So, Joe, you mentioned this before, and I'm going to reiterate this in talking about the Eagles, but the wide receiver core is not great. Carson Wentz is a star when healthy. If he can ever actually make it to and through a playoff game, he can really be a success. But he needs people to throw the ball to. The best pass catchers on this team are not wide receivers. They're tight ends and running backs. Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, and Miles Sanders. Last year, former emergency quarterback Greg Ward Jr. became pretty much their top wide receiver in their stretch run, especially that Week 16 winner-go-home game against the Dallas Cowboys. And you want Carson Wentz to get back to that 2017 form. Alshon Jeffrey is going to be the number one wide receiver when he comes back. He might come back from his Liz Frank injury late September, early October. That seems like a stretch, but that's the timeline that the Eagles are hoping for, and they might have to get. Jalen Reagor got hurt during training camp. He'll miss the start of the season. Deshaun Jackson is injury-prone, and as we learned in this offseason, foot and mouth-prone as well.
Yep.
DJ Arcega-Whiteside is just the meh slot guy that you could think of in the NFL. Marquise Goodwin is actually a very good pickup from San Francisco because he can be the deep threat on this team. I think if Deshaun is ever at 100%, having him and Goodwin on both of the sides will really help out. But the Philly wide receiver core is one of the worst in the NFL, and Eagles fans cannot even blame Nelson Aguilar for all of their troubles anymore. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was looking through. I have it up right now. You look through it, and all you see is these red marks of out, doubtful, questionable, out. And again, Deshaun Jackson, obviously, he's a lot older this time. He still can run, but he's not an every down. You know, this is exactly what we were talking about before. This guy's not an every down player. When he sees he's got a matchup that he can win at, he'll go out and win at it. Throw his hand up. If he doesn't get it, he'll sulk. He'll walk back to the sideline. Won't play the next two plays. You know, that's just the type of guy he is, and that's what he's always been. He's not an every down player. He's not going to block for you. He's not going to be out there doing anything but what's good for Deshaun Jackson and tell you about it afterwards. Again, you look through this group, there's 12 names on this list, 16 names on this list. 4 of them are listed as out. And the rest of the guys aren't, you know, like you said, Arcega-Whiteside is a slot guy. Greg Ward is not exactly a wide receiver. You know, you don't have anything. I think what I wrote down in my notes for you guys today was they are going to be very busy on the waiver wire. Yeah. I think this weekend is going to make or break their wide receiver core because they're going to go out and have to find some guy that got cut, some guy that just doesn't fit on somebody's roster, which is going to be more difficult this year with 16 practice squad players as opposed to what they used to carry, which was 8 or 10, and being able to keep extra veterans on that group. So they're going to be spending a lot of time this weekend, I can imagine, trying to figure out who else we can get, who can we bring in here, even just to take up some space for some time. Because I don't even know how you practice with only 2, 4, 6, 7 guys. That's very difficult to figure out how they're even putting their offense together. So at some point, like you said, Jeffrey will come back, Goodwin will come back, but what are they going to be like when they come back? How long is that going to take? I know we have them on a Thursday
night. Need to adjust real quickly.
Week 7.
Okay. So I'm the guy who gets stuck with the division's most interesting team, and not necessarily in a good way. Joe, obviously it's been a interesting offseason for the football team that plays in our nation's capital. New name, which we won't have until next season. Owner under fire again for multiple reasons, not that there's anything new about that. New VP of broadcast operations, new president who's on the business side, and a new head coach. Now, I am a fan of this hire. I think Ron Rivera is the right guy to right the ship in D.C. I hope Snyder is so distracted with lawsuits that he actually leaves Rivera alone to actually run things on the football field. But to say that Rivera it comes into a situation where the cupboard is leaning more towards bare than anything else, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. He's got a good young rookie DE and Chase Young. Kid's got 15 sack potential written all over him. Not necessarily this year, maybe, but other than that, not a lot on the defensive side. On the offensive side, Adrian Peterson. What else you got after that? The key for them, the big story is the quarterback position. We know what happened with Dwayne Haskins last year. 7 starts. He was thrown off the deep end by a coach who wasn't really crazy about playing him at all. He had an up and down season, which, most rookie quarterbacks do. And then you get the feel-good story of the NFL offseason into training camp season, and that is the return to football activity of Alex Smith, who endured one of the most egregious and gruesome leg injuries since another Washington quarterback, Joe Theismann. And the question I got for you is there any chance, and obviously it's not going to be week 1, but is there any chance at some point in this season where Alex Smith actually gets to a point where he can take over the starting job from Haskins? Because Smith is 100% healthy and getting full-on reps and showing off the guy he used to be, and Haskins is still treading water. If that scenario happens, can you see Smith at some point becoming the starting quarterback in Washington?
Yeah, I think, everything. I agree with everything you said, but I think that the tough thing with Alex is not only going to be, getting back on the field, it's going to be getting hit again. And I'm sure he's gone through this in his mind enough times, and he went through a ton. But, I would be much more comfortable with him playing next year. Give him, he just came back from this injury to the point where he can run around. It's not like he's coming back and you're going to expect him to go out there and play 16 games. At least I don't think they think that.
No, they're going to stash him on IR to start the season.
He hasn't been, touched yet. He hasn't been cleared for contact yet. So it's a fantastic story. And, I don't want to diminish it at all, but I would be much happier, like you said, stick him on IR and then figure out what to do with him next year. If you're keeping him, if you're going to trade him, if he shows some promise at the end of this year or something, maybe he's one of those guys you bring back off of IR later in the season under the new rules. But I think they got to roll the dice with somebody they don't really, maybe not even want on the team in Haskins. And again, I don't know what Ron Rivera's feeling was about that whole thing. And we all know that was not, he was not a top 10 pick.
And no matter what Stephen A. Smith said on draft night.
Yeah, and he was touted as, why didn't the Giants take him at number 3 or whatever? It was just because you throw 50 touchdowns against Ball State at Ohio State doesn't make you the greatest quarterback that ever lived. And that's what people have to get away from. We talked about this on draft night all the time. Even Anthony, even you and I talking about Chase Young, and I always say, whenever anybody talks to me about Chase Young, I think he's going to be fantastic. But where's Jadeveon Clowney these days? And how many championships did he help a team win? They didn't even get to a playoff, to a championship game when he played in Houston, and then he went to Seattle. They did nothing, and now he's not even on a team. And that's not that long ago. So I think there are certain guys that get picked in this league that are all on their college mantle, and people kind of project that going forward. I just don't think Dwayne Haskins is ready to take that next big step to lead this team, especially, as you point out, they don't have much to lead. He's got Adrian Peterson, who's hurt now. He's got Steven Sims Jr. and Dontrell Inman, not exactly household names.
Nope.
Doesn't really have a tight end. And he's got, an offensive line in front of him. They're all very young, all lower draft picks, all 5th and 6th round draft picks, but they'll be there, except for Sheriff, who's coming back. But they do have a very good pass rush. Both their cornerbacks are now out. They're both hurt. So, again, I think the Ron Rivera pick was perfect. I think he's the guy to start this process. And, again, just like we talk about in Dallas, you got to get the ownership out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that this morning, or last night, Rivera actually officially named Haskins the starter for the season. But what's going to be interesting to me is, and what doesn't really get talked about enough, Kyle Allen was picked up on this team. This is a guy who has starter experience. Be interesting to see how short a leash Haskins actually has. Do you accept the fact that this is a flat-out rebuilding year and throw the kid off the deep end, let him make his mistakes and see if he can grow? Or do you get him on a short leash and throw Allen in there because you just want to try and get a W on the board? It's going to be interesting to see how they play that.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly what happened to them last year was, like you said, that the coach didn't want to play him, probably didn't even want to pick him, and then got forced to play him.
Basically.
Because he gets hurt, and now you're like, okay, now what do we do? He doesn't know the playbook, so we're stuck. So I think he'll be a little bit better prepared this year because I don't think they just ignored him in training camp like they did last year. So he'll be better at some points. But, he's an extreme – I know a good friend of mine who's a big Ohio State fan. And I always try to go to people who watch every game and try to look at things. And he had said to me, look, the guy's got extremely accurate, and he's got a big arm. But if he has to take 2 steps to the right or 2 steps to the left, he can't throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And in the NFL, I don't know how many times you get to stand still. Again, you're not playing Ball State. You're not playing Miami or Ohio.
Nope.
You're playing the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers and teams that are going to come after you when they know that you don't like to move and they know that you are inaccurate on the run. They're going to make sure you're on the run.
Yeah.
Coaches are too smart in this league.
I like how Joe mentioned the fact that Chase Young will have to be thrown off the deep end, as last year wasn't being thrown off the deep end.
Well, it's a different kind of deep end for Haskins this year. I mean, the thing is that he's basically been, even before Rivera officially named him, he's been the nominal starter throughout camp. He's taken most of the reps with the first team. So, I mean, whether they think he's the long-term answer, I think they're going to give him as much of a shot as they possibly can to see if he has it, maybe not necessarily in terms of counting stats, but if he has it in terms of this, making the right decisions, even if they're not the spectacular play decisions, because he doesn't have enough talent around him to gauge the things that lead to the good counting stats. So it's a question of, does he make enough things that qualify as good decision stats for them to get a handle on whether or not he's their future or he's just there this year?
Yeah, this is really his rookie season. This is like you said, he's been treated as the starting quarterback now. This is his rookie season. Let's see if you can digest the playbook, make decisions, understand where we're going, make checks, do all those things.
Yep.
He's a year behind everybody else that came in the league with him, but who cares? You now have to find out in this team that's probably not going to be very good. You need to develop him and then make a decision on him just on his performance. The same thing with Daniel Jones at Duke. He had 75 drop passes. So you don't worry about how many completions he had. You worry about, did he do all the things he could do to put the ball in the spot? And then you worry about other stats at other times. So.
Which is why I've become a big fan of completion percentage above expected as a stat. Right. Because it takes into account drops by your receivers.
Yeah.
It's a better indication of how accurate your quarterback is actually being. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to be an interesting year in Washington. Joe, before we let you go, do you got a personal choice on what the new name for that team should be?
No.
Good answer.
I have no thought process as to where they're going with this. I think it's, I knew it was coming and I knew it was necessary. I'm not arguing with the obvious thing that they needed to do it. I just don't want them to overreact too much. Find something that's historical to that city. Agreed. And do something like that. When the Nationals came back, that whole thing, figure something out that makes sense. That's not going to obviously anger anybody, but it should be something either historic or it should be something just basic.
Agreed.
The monuments or something, just, whatever looks good on a t-shirt, that's all you're worried about anyway, is how many jerseys you can sell.
I was actually thinking of the Washington monuments immediately while we were talking.
Why do they don't change the colors and all that? I don't think they need to go that far.
No.
I don't think that was the part that was, objectionable. So don't go crazy and change everything. I want them back at RFK. I'd like to see them actually play in Washington.
Yep.
That's where I come from. But again, I think they come up with something basic. I'm glad they made the changes. Julie Donaldson's a wonderful person. She was great when she was with the Mets. She's now in charge of their broadcasting, and I think they're making a lot of the right moves. Again, the only right move is to get rid of Daniel Snyder.
Yep. Amen.
God. We could have a whole entire 3 hours talking about the screw-ups of the Washington football team, but Joe, we are going to let you go unless you want to talk Jets with us, and I don't know if you really want to do that
you know what that conversation would
consist. Exactly. Anyway, Joe,
we want to put him on the spot for a prediction before we let him go.
Sure. I mean, Joe, do you expect the Giants? I'm just going to ask you a very simple question. Do you expect the Giants to be better than 2019 at the same level they were in 2019, or much better than 2019? Because if it's worse, we're all in trouble.
Yeah, I think better for, and again, not worried so much about wins and losses. I think more competitive. I think smarter. As much as I enjoyed Pat Shurmur as a person, there seemed to always be something every week. There's oh, we didn't think of that, or something came up that he missed that they didn't practice, or he did a challenge wrong, or it was. I don't think he was as organized as he needed to be a head coach, and so I'm looking forward to a much cleaner look, a much tougher team, a smarter team, less penalties. That was Parcells' thing and Belichick's thing is if you start out the season and you have 8 penalties in the first game, I'm hoping by week 16 we have 0 penalties. And just play better, play smarter, be in every game, and don't beat yourself, which I don't think they'll do.
Yeah. Can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, don't remind me of Pat Shurmur who's going for it on 4th and 18 against the Cardinals.
Although it was the greatest call in the world and it almost worked, except the guy fell down. So
yeah.
It's only a great call if it works.
Yeah, I know. The flea flicker was
perfect. All right, Joe. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, great. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you again definitely in the future. Joe Tufaro has many different blogs, but you can all find those blogs and links on Twitter at Tufdan, Tufdan. Thank you for joining us again tonight.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, so let's move on to the team that cohabits the New York Giants at MetLife Stadium as Joe is logging off. Let's talk about the New York Jets. They finished a fool's gold 7-9 in 2019. And that's only because they won. Fool's gold 7-9.
Perfect turn of phrase to describe that season, Rabbi. Perfect.
Yes, they only won 6 out of their last 8, and that's why we have the Fool's Gold line. They have a lot of questions, and the 3 of us are going to answer them. Let's start with Jay. Who's this team's key player on defense?
And this is the question I had coming into training camp, and even more so once Jamal Adams got traded. And pleasantly surprised by the fact that it is the guy who was in his shadow last season is his safety mate, Marcus May, a guy who's been the best player on either side of the ball since camp open. He's blanketed tight end Chris Herndon, who's expected to be Sam Darnold's safety net. He's covered running backs coming out of the backfield on wheel routes. He snuck up to the line from his safety spot, timing the snap perfectly and bolting into the backfield for what would be a sack on a 3rd down play. You can't actually hit Darnold, so it was a pseudo sack for these purposes. He's played linebacker. He's blitzed. He's played deep safety. And all the while, he's been quarterbacking the secondary. As I said earlier, he's finally going to get a chance to come out of the shadow that Jamal Adams cast during his time there. And he's showing just how much of a Swiss Army knife he's going to be for Greg Williams' defense this season. He's already been dubbed the everywhere man. Because he's literally been everywhere all over the field. And the thing is we're finding out is that just because May didn't do certain things during the last 3 years definitely doesn't mean he can't. The Jets didn't need him near the line of scrimmage or in man coverage because they had Adams. Now May has the freedom to reach his full potential in Greg Williams' defense, which is historically kind to safeties. From a number standpoint, in May's last 22 games, now remember, wrist injury ended his 2018 season after 6 games. He had just 99 tackles, half a sack, 0 quarterback hits, 1 forced fumble, 2 picks, 9 passes broken up. That's a 16-game average of 72 tackles, 6.5 breakups, 1.5 picks, and that looks on paper to be relatively pedestrian. However, if you look a little deeper, and you guys know when it comes to stats, I always do, the numbers show that he finished the last 2 years with Pro Football Focus's grades of 80 and 74.5 for safeties. Quarterbacks had a passer rating of 62.5 and 76 in those last 2 years throwing his way. He allowed just 2 touchdowns in those 22 games, and that's just with him playing center field, being the last line of the defense. I think head coach Adam Gase actually put it really well. Quote, "You're not really sure what he's going to do when he's lined up. You don't know if he's coming. You don't know if he's going to the middle of the field. You don't know if he's going to the halfway point of the field. You don't know if he's going to play underneath coverage." Marcus has very good awareness, especially in zones. He's really good man-to-man. He has a really good ability to break up balls in man coverage, which you notice out there. He gets a lot of hands-on balls. Marcus brings a ton of versatility. He's extremely smart. He's able to get guys lined up and make things look like one thing only to do something else, end quote. Look, the Jets, as we know, do not have a dynamic, explosive offense. Not with the wide receiver core they have, even with the addition of Mr. Chris Hogan. They don't appear to have found a legit pass rushing threat anywhere on the front seven. The cornerback situation is uncertain due to injury, though Pierre Desir did return to practice this week. All that means Gang Green is going to need Marcus May to come up big time and give them a chance at a decent season. The good thing is that May is very much ready to take on that role.
And Chris Hogan, by the way, fulfills your AFC East bingo card, playing now for every team in the division. So you win the AFC East bingo card if you have Hogan. All right. So let's talk about the running back situation. Anthony mentioned how Le'Veon Bell is in the spotlight this year to have a much better season than he had a year ago. But remember, Le'Veon only got 16.5 carries in the backfield, which for a guy in Le'Veon's stature, you can't have. But Frank Gore is now on this team, and Frank Gore, who is 37 years old, older than myself. There's
ageless
players who are older than myself and Anthony in this league. Gore can still make an impact. In the first 7 games last year, he averaged 4.4 yards per carry, and then went from 3. And then he kind of tailed off a little bit. 3.8, 1.4, 2.4, 2.5, 4.3, 1.2, 1.5, and 1.5. He kind of had to give up the load to Devin Singletary later in the season, who was a better option for the Bills. However, Gore, I think Bell is a good first and second down back, but if you need like 3 or 4 yards, I think Frank Gore is your guy. And both have injury concerns, and that worries me a little bit, but hopefully they don't get injured at the same time. This is not the greatest Thunder and Lightning combo over there, but at their 80% level or 85% level, it works. And again, when you have a wide receiver core, which is lost Robbie Anderson in the offseason, and it's going to be led by Brashad Perryman, and again, your AFC East bingo winner, Chris Hogan, you're going to need a ton of support from Bell and Gore. I think they have that, and you might throw in a very, very little bit of LaMichael Perrine. He is not ready yet in any way, shape, or form to get a significant workload, and I think he was way overdrafted by the Jets, but that's another story for another time. Gore is going to be a very interesting piece to this team. If he stays healthy, I might get to like 800 or 900 yards for. Be a 1,000-yard rusher. He'll always be that fantasy guy who you're like, I could have picked him up off of waivers. And then you're like, he had a good game this week. But I think the Jets' running back position is okay. I don't know. There's nothing on the Jets team to really be excited about. But the running back position just might be the mehest part of all.
It's an interesting setup because you have 2 running backs who are diametrically opposed when it comes to running styles.
Yeah.
Bell's style, as we know, is
east-west.
He's patient. He's dancing around, looking for the perfect hole to cut into and get into the second level. Gore is straight ahead, one cut, north-south. And I think the issue that Gase had last year is Gase prefers north-south guys. It's why Gore is on this team now. The thing is that there are ways to utilize these guys, having them both on the field at the same time, where Gore lines up as your running back, and then maybe you start Bell in the backfield and then put him in motion, split him out wide, and take advantage of his skills as a receiver.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Gase completely and utterly dropped the ball from that standpoint last year. You may not like Gase's running style. It may not work with your preferred running scheme, but to not utilize one of the best pass-catching backs in the NFL, a guy who, even though he wasn't going to get paid like one, correctly made the case that he basically can play wide receiver in this league, and you don't utilize him as such when you are so bereft of playmakers on the perimeter. If he doesn't utilize him that way this year, the Jets aren't going to go anywhere. They need to make 100% use of all of the weapons they have in all the ways they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the big things with Bell is, can he be that guy now 3 years removed from his peak as a wide receiver? I don't know if I want to see Bell and Gore on the field at the same time, because I don't know if Bell is going to be that good of a pass catcher. But the one thing that I can say is these two have actually worked well together in training camp. These two, Bell has learned from Gore. Gore is the veteran of this team, and that, I think, might make a bigger impact than anything else to keep Le'Veon Bell as a good citizen to this team, because he's only 28. He's still going to be a Jet for at least another 2 years. They signed him for 4 years. They're probably going to have him for 4. Anthony, just like the Giants, when Joe picked absolutely nobody. We love Joe, but he kind of hedged his bets on that answer. Give me a team that will be the toughest team for the Jets this year.
Wow, you know what? I looked at the Jets schedule, and November 1st at Kansas City, it just stuck out like a sore thumb. I mean, whether they have fans there or not, on the road against the defending Super Bowl champions, it's a tall order. I mean, we talk about the Jets secondary, and obviously without Jamal Adams and and those guys kind of being now the spotlight. Now you got the Chiefs offense full intact, and having to deal with the Legion of Zoom, who I'm going to talk about later on this show, and also you talking about the offense, and I mentioned a few weeks ago in our training camp show, Le'Veon Bell's usage literally being non-existent last year. You're going to have to put points on the board against Kansas City. Regardless of how good your defense plays, you gotta score touchdowns rather than field goals. I mean, field goals is not going to get it done. We've seen Kansas City literally explode for 50 points in a playoff game after spotting another team 24 points. So this team was scoring offense. This is a matter of, can the Jets actually generate some points offensively? So that's definitely going to be the toughest game far as my opinion, and that's a schedule that's loaded too. I mean, that the first 11 weeks you got at Buffalo to start the season. They play the 49ers. They got they're gonna have a much improved Arizona Cardinal team on the schedule too, along with the Chargers and again another against New England. And as far as wins, you can kind of think about the 2 Miami games, because Miami, and I'm going to talk about the Dolphins in the next segment. Miami is kind of a team in transition, so that might be a win or 2. But I'm going to look at October 1st, and that's a Thursday night game against Denver. I mean, I think that we play at home. I know that the Jets won't have any fans, but that's a Thursday night game, a short week. The Broncos gonna have a young quarterback of their own. That's a game you pretty much should win. I mean, I think Greg Williams has enough of a defensive scheme to kind of give the Jets defense an edge in that game, especially on a short week. So I would say that would be kind of the easiest gimme game that they can have, and that's kind of a reach, because I'm not expecting the Jets to really be a competitive team as far as 7-9 and 8-8. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the 7-9 record was a bit of a mirage because of how they finished the season. Agreed. But I think they're more of the Jet team that started out 1-6, 1-7 at the beginning of last season. I think they're more on that side of the spectrum rather than the 6-2 finish that got them the 7-9 record. So Like I said, the hardest game is Kansas City. The easiest and not much of a reach, but the easiest definitely going to be the home Thursday night game against Denver.
And when I look at this schedule before we move on, I know we've ran pretty damn long. My biggest pet peeve at Miami, bye week, Miami.
Why? Yeah, I'm not sure what the schedule makers was
schedule back-to-back games against. Yeah, I've never seen back-to-back games against an opponent. That's what.
No, it's not something that the NFL normally does. I mean, it's one thing to have. It's one thing to close out a series with a division rival, both games being played in the front half of the season. But back-to-back, no, not. I mean, and I'm sorry.
Separated by a bye week, but still back-to-back.
Yeah, it's not something that you do where you are playing the same opponent two consecutive times. That I don't know.
Yeah, it's an odd schedule, Krog. I don't know if the NFL was really planning that ahead. It just kind of came out that way, but you don't really see that often. When you're seeing it, you're basically seeing that the NFL equivalents are back to back with a bye week kind of sandwiched in there.
Let's just chalk it up to the trending hashtag because 2020.
Yeah, well, because 2020 is Anyway. AFC East has been the Patriots' division for many, 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 many years. But that division streak
is guys your entire adulthood, huh?
Yes, but I do. Yeah. I remember Chad Pennington winning that division a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But anyway, this is a non-Tom Brady division now, and it's a division of change, so to speak. So we're going to look at the other three contenders right now. Jay, you have New England.
Yeah, I do. And, obviously the big question is, can Cam Newton fill some Tom Brady-sized shoes in New England? Look, I mean, and here's the thing, guys. We all know that the first post-Brady edition of the Patriots will go as far as Cam Newton's health will take them. The 2015 MVP doesn't make them a lock to continue Bill Belichick's domination of the AFC East, but I think he gives them a better chance than Jarrett Stidham. No offense, Sean. I know you love the kid from Auburn.
They're both kids from Auburn, actually.
Well, yeah, I know, but there's a difference here. Better chance than he would based on, what's happened in camp. Stidham's and what has happened is Stidham's more likely to end up as the number 3 behind Newton and Brian Hoyer, who knows the Patriot system inside and out, having spent 5 of his 11 years with New England. In their 12th and final session of training camp, Cam had his best day of practice, went 10 of 13. His 3 misses were an overthrow, a drop, and a pass breakup. Overall in camp, he was 130 of 201. That's 64.7%. Only 5 picks. If you want to compare, Brady completed 69% of his camp passes, averaged 3 picks a year in camp from 2016 to 2019. And like Brady, it looks like he's established a connection with Julian. Pronounce it correctly for me, Rabbi.
Edelman.
Thank you. They hooked up for 16 completions on 24 targets. That's 2/3. Only 1 pass breakup, though Julian had 4 drops, which is uncharacteristic of him. But either way, that should bode well for the season, as Edelman does move the chains, and every quarterback needs a guy who moves the chains. Newton also hooked up well with the Patriots' 2 most reliable pass catchers out of the backfield, Rex Burkhead and James Wright, completing 15 of 17 to Burkhead, 14 of 21 to White. What was interesting is that despite being a productive possession receiver for his 8-year career and undoubtedly one of the 5 best receivers in training camp, Newton connected 13 of 21 with him. The Patriots actually released Mohamed Sanu this week, which is an interesting move and one that I'm still scratching my head over.
He was never a Belichick guy. That's kind of one of the main reasons I feel like.
And that's kind of where I came down on that as the only on-field reason, if you will. The move does free up $6.5 million in cap space. Gives the Pats almost $40 million in available cap space, which is most in the NFL. So look for them to be active once final cuts are made to try and pick up another wide receiver or tight end to give Newton as many weapons as possible. Look, Newton put himself in the driver's seat for the starting quarterback slot by the 4th practice, and nothing has changed since then. So expect him to be under center on opening day. Yes, the Patriots need to improve at wide receiver and tight end. Yes, the right tackle spot is not as solid with Marcus Cannon opting out. Yes, the Pats defense returns a league low 44.7% of their snaps from last year's number one defense with all the guys opting out and other changes. But I think Josh McDaniels is going to find creative ways to take advantage of Newton's arm and legs. And as long as Newton stays healthy, and I can't keep repeating that enough because it is the headline here. And the Hood does what the Hood does in terms of his thing of getting the most out of the roster that he has. I think the Patriots are going to make life harder for the Jets, Bills, and Dolphins than those teams thought they could earlier in the year when Brady went to Tampa Bay. The AFC East is a lot more wide open, but the Patriots have a lot better chance now than they did, a few months ago.
Two things. First of all, with Cam, he was named a team captain. I don't know if that's symbolic enough, but it shows he's at least
number one is not symbolic enough. I mean,
no, I mean being named a team captain does show that he is learning the Patriot way, so to speak, of Bill and being named team captain and everything else. And also, Jay, you've come up with my favorite phrase of the night: "The Hood does what the Hood does." That needs to be on a hoodie immediately. Put it to print. All right. So the team
doing Hood things, man. He's been doing it in New England for a million years, it seems. If he does it again, don't be surprised if the Patriots win the AFC East.
I won't be surprised if the Patriots will win the AFC East because they might be doing it with an 8-8 record if the Buffalo Bills do not perform up to expectations.
Excellent segue.
Yeah, it is a very good segue. Anyway, the Bills are the betting favorites to win the AFC East this year. So how do they become the new beasts of the AFC East and get them maybe to even get them a playoff victory, which they haven't had since the 90s? Here's how they do it. Josh Allen needs to become a QB1. Very simple. Josh Allen needs to be the star and the person who is the best quarterback in that division. He had only 2 INTs after week 6 a season ago, but has also fumbled the ball 22 times in 28 games in his career and did so a lot in that game against the Texans in the wild card round, which was one of the reasons why they lost that game. Allen only beat one team last year that ended up making the playoffs, the Tennessee Titans, who had Mark Mariota at quarterback, not Ryan Tannehill.
Okay, that explains it.
Yes, he was 24th in passer rating a season ago, and as we've seen in the Super Bowl, you need to be good at the quarterback position, San Francisco, and Allen has struggled in the biggest games. He averaged 206 yards per game last year and a 58% completion percentage. That number is amazing for a QB in 2000. Allen could throw deep and was also 24th in throws over 15 yards, and he needs to fix that because of the addition of one of the best deep balls in the game and a guy who I still think is a number one wide receiver, and we won't get into it again that we did on that.
We argued it to death.
If there's no improvement in Josh Allen, the Bills will be rethinking their future. And honestly, because of the talent they have on defense, and I'm not going to get into here, they are not only the best team in the AFC East, but they can be the third best team in the AFC with all the talent that they have on defense. And they could –
Rabbi stepping out on a limb there.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they can. But, again, as we'll talk about in a second, it's not going to take a lot to be the third best team in the AFC this year. There's enough talent for this team.
The gap between the first two and everybody else.
That's what we'll talk about in just a second. There is a lot of talent on this team to go far, but they will only go as far as Josh Allen takes them.
Speaking of going as far as
the team that gets you, Anthony, you have the Dolphins.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I get that. I get Kenny Litter pretty much. By the way, getting back to Chad Pennington, when he won the division, I was at Hofstra before you. So that's how long the New England Patriots has dominated the AFC East.
The Eric Mangini era, the Brett Favre era, I was supposed to speak. We were both out of Hofstra. It was 2008.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time.
I'm going to put the cap on Chad Pennington with this. That guy did not get enough respect and enough for his quarterback play.
Absolutely.
On those Jet teams.
Yeah, I mentioned when I was at Hofstra, that was when he was with the Jets. When we left Hofstra, he won it with Miami, with the Dolphins, aforementioned. And, yeah, he didn't get enough credit for how good he was as a starting quarterback. Great guy, by the way. I met him a few times when they practiced at Hofstra. a couple years back. But
Cool.
getting back to the Miami Dolphins, think how bad they were last year and how the front office is bad. They had several players, Baker Fitzpatrick, Kenny Stills, who was traded away and gone through the season. They were literally outscored 238-77 and losing 7 straight to start the season. They were bad.
They were awful.
But Brian Flores, head coach, stuck to it. He got them to start playing hard. They finished winning 4 of the last 5 games. Actually threw a monkey wrench in the New England Patriots playoff plans.
There's a reason probably why the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year, I'll be completely honest.
Yeah, and it led to the Patriots losing a wild card game to the Tennessee Titans, who the Kansas City Chiefs ended up beating the AFC title game in part because they got a bye week due to the Patriots losing. But besides the point, this whole season is going to be about when Tua Tagovailoa is going to start. I mean, let's be honest. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic, he
tragic.
He could go from Fitzmagic to Fitztragic within weeks. He start
in one single pass attempt, Anthony. Come on.
Every team he's been on, he's played well, and you have that one moment where it all falls apart.
Yep.
And we see it time and time again. But how bad was the Miami Dolphins offense? He led the team in rushing last year. So that kind of tells you how pretty pathetic Miami's offense was when the quarterback is the leading rusher.
When
so they go out and they bring in Jordan Howard, Matt Breida to kind of add to the running attack. But then you look along that offensive line, and they got a trio of rookies who's going to be playing: Austin Jackson, Solomon Kinley, and Robert Hunt. And you're overpaying for, I know Giant fans hate to hear this name, Eric Flowers, to play guard.
Wow.
And you're looking at a pretty long year. And the rabbi kind of walked off.
I was that close.
You're looking at a pretty long season offensively. And like I said, and here's the thing, defensively, I think Miami is good enough. They play hard, they play well. They bought into what Brian Flores just was coaching all season. The defense is going to keep him in a lot of games, but the offense is not good. And when Tua Tagovailoa does start, evidently, they're going to be a lot worse. It's going to be a growing pains on that side of football. So I don't expect the Miami Dolphins to really do so much. I think they'll play hard defensively. Offensively is what a mess is going to be. And like I said, when you have that bad of an offensive line and you're not sure what's going to happen with the running game, when you have a rookie quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa, who was coming off an injury, by the way, that ended his final season in Alabama, I mean, it's a lot of question marks. And
ready to go now, thank God.
It's a lot of question marks right now. He's ready to go. He's healthy, but it's going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick's team for the foreseeable future. And a good thing, and what I did like was Tagovailoa buying in. He did an interview wearing a Ryan Fitzpatrick jersey, so I think he understands that right now he's holding a clipboard and he's kind of the student learning behind a veteran until he's ready to go. But look at the Miami Dolphins schedule. That might be sooner rather than later if Fitzpatrick struggles and the Miami Dolphins gets off to a really bad start, which is actually expected.
Yeah, and we've been going a little long here, by the way, because our last segment is the Islanders. But apparently, if you're watching the Islander game as we're watching the Islander game in the background,
they're going longer than us, by the way.
They're going longer than we are, guys. As much as we may be slowing the pace so that the game actually ends while we're still on the air.
At this point, we'll see. At this point,
I don't know if it's going to happen.
At this point, we'll see what happens, but we still have 3 more segments left to go before we get to that. Let's talk about Super Bowl contenders. The NFC had 5 10-win teams in 2020. That's not even including the best division in football, the NFC East, and their champion making the playoffs. I mean, we love the NFC East around here. It's the best division in football.
Yeah.
We can expect a ton of Super Bowl contenders in this conference in 2020. Anthony, we'll start with the defending NFC champions and what they can do.
Oh, boy. If you're a 49er fan, if you're a player, the last several months is going to be the most agonizing several months of your life.
Good
Lord.
You
think about the 49ers were literally 9.5 minutes, maybe even less.
7.5 minutes.
Yeah, from the 6th franchise Super Bowl, and it all came apart. And in part because of the quarterback play. You think about this, it's been a lot of speculation. Of course, last year we saw it that the 49ers won games in spite of Jimmy Garoppolo. And there were we saw in the playoffs where the 49ers literally ran the ball an entire half and not have Garoppolo throw a single pass, which is the bread and butter of this 49ers offense. It's the running game. You look at the trio of running backs that they have. You have Raheem Mostert, they have Jeremy McKinnon, Tevin Coleman, Jeff Wilson Jr. They have 4 very capable running backs that they can run by committee. And we saw Mostert literally tell the Green Bay Packers defense to shreds in the NFC Championship game. So we know he is a big game running back. Look at the wide receivers, Deebo Samuel, Trent Taylor, to go with Tavon Austin, who they brought in, and to go with George Kittle, who they signed to a long-term extension. The 49ers have weapons on offense, and it comes down to the quarterback. With a full season under Kyle Shanahan's system, can Jimmy Garoppolo take that extra step? I mean, there was those in the Super Bowl that he missed that, that you need a championship caliber quarterback to make. In particular, there was a third down play where he missed, it was an incomplete pass, but he missed a wide open George Kittle that could have went for a touchdown. Maybe the Chiefs are not even close to coming back in that game if he's able to complete that pass. But it's going to come down to Garoppolo. The defense is going to be down. They did lose. They did trade Buckner to Indianapolis, so that's a bit of a key loss still on the defensive end. But the 49ers should be right there when they get back to the Super Bowl. I don't know. There's some contenders in the NFC that may have something to say about that, as you two also bring up. But the 49ers, their championship host, like in the Super Bowl, is going to rest on Jimmy Garoppolo if he can take that next step as far as being a quarterback who can make the big throw when called upon.
7:14, by the way, is the amount of time that when the pass interference happened on the 3rd and 15. So within 6 minutes left in the Super Bowl, they were up 20-10.
Yeah, Anthony, you hit it nail on the head. For me, guys, it's Garoppolo, and it's a question of which Jimmy Garoppolo is going to show up when the Niners need a quarterback to show up and make plays.
Yeah, and you can't. 8 times throwing the ball in an NFC championship.
Yeah, I don't care how good your rushing attack is going, and granted, they were gashing the Chiefs' run defense. I'm sorry, your quarterback needs to be able to make plays.
Yeah. I get back to the Giants Super Bowl 21 run when the Giants won a playoff game 49-3, and Phil Simms only completed 10 passes the entire game. But that just tell you how good their running game and defense was. But he did make plays in the Super Bowl, by the way.
That was then. This is now.
Yeah. So moving on. Let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks, the San Francisco 49ers buddies over in the NFC West, who was literally one play away from being the number 1 seed that San Francisco was. And
how about 1 inch away from being a 1 seed?
Essentially, yes. 1 hitch, 1 play, they could have easily been the 1 seed, and they would have probably been the ones going to Miami to face the Kansas City Chiefs. Russell, most of this team is back, and obviously the addition of Jamal Adams is huge, and the Seattle Seahawks want to recreate the Legion of Boom 2.0. I don't know if that's going to actually happen, but this offense is going to really be the stars of this team. Russell Wilson, there were games last year where he looked like an MVP, and there were games last year where he almost didn't look like a detriment, but didn't look like the guy who could be an MVP form, which is what Seattle needs to do to get to their big potential. I love their trio of wide receivers. Tyler Lockett is a top 10 wide receiver in this league. DK Metcalf of Ole Miss, formerly, great fit on this team as a rookie. And then Philip Dorsett is a very, very sneaky free agent acquisition that kind of fills into what Russell Wilson likes to do and can be a really huge deep threat for a team with a ton of deep threats. They run the ball better than any team and have probably one of the best 1-2 combinations, if not the best 1-2 combination in football, of Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde. Hyde actually did a good job last year with the Texans, and Rashad Penny is healing up, and maybe you get him late in the year after tearing an ACL late last season.
Rabbi, I will have an argument to your comment that the Seahawks are the best rushing team in the NFL.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second, because they're also the team that might just possibly have a little bit of an issue. We'll talk about the Islanders going to Game 7 in just a second. But the Seattle Seahawks have been a team who has had a lot of promise for years and years and years, and I think this is the year that they might finally cash in, because it's now or never for this team. Russell Wilson isn't getting any younger, and Pete Carroll only has a few good years left, I think, in coaching. And you never thought this team would get back into the levels that they were in the Super Bowl 49 era, but the Seattle Seahawks might just be there. Jay, now let's talk about the best rushing team in football.
Well, that'll have to keep until we get to the AFC segment, Rabbi. We are still in the NFC.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of people might think this team is a better rushing combination than the Seattle Seahawks too, by the way.
Depends on how you look at it. The big question for me, and the team we are talking about, guys, is the New Orleans Saints. And the big question for me and for them coming into the season, is this the last stand for Drew Brees and Sean Payton? And if it is, I think the team they're going to roll out gives them a great chance to get another ring. With no OTAs in May, no mini camps in June, no preseason games, teams that have the most continuity from last year in terms of returning their head coach, returning their offensive and defensive coordinators, returning their starting quarterback, and returning a high percentage of expected snaps from their offensive and defensive units, I think will have a leg up on the rest of the league. New Orleans qualifies here across the board, and when the, in fact, fourth in the NFL in terms of this metric. They return Sean Payton as head coach and de facto offensive coordinator, Drew Brees as the starting quarterback, Dennis Allen as the defensive coordinator. They return 9 of 11 starters and 77% of the snaps from the NFL's fourth most efficient offense. That's 10th in the NFL in terms of those snaps. And while they lost wide receiver Ted Ginn to free agency, his replacement is a definitive upgrade in Emmanuel Sanders. They return almost 74% of the snaps, 7th in the NFL, from the NFL's 11th most efficient defense. And they added one of the best safeties in the game in Malcolm Jenkins. So a team that's gone 26-6 over the last 2 seasons, upgrading at 2 key positions like that to a roster that's already loaded. It's kind of why I like the Saints this season, guys. Granted, Brees is 41, and there are concerns that his skill set will start to drop off. It's a legit concern, even if that concern remains in the background, because, nobody likes to talk about that scenario in New Orleans, especially after his percentage of downfield throws dropped to a little under 8% after 3 straight years over 10%. But Brees was 3rd in quarterback rating, 2nd in completion percentage above expectation, which is a stat that looks at the probability of a completion on every throw based on factors like how far the throw is, how open the receiver is, how much pressure the quarterback is under, and then comes up with an expected completion percentage and compares that to the number of the quarterback's actual completion percentage. It's a long-winded stat, but it does give a better sense of how accurate a quarterback is. And Brees remains one of the NFL's most accurate passers and one of the best at avoiding negative plays. Only 4% of his dropbacks last year resulted in a sack, fumble, or a pick. Saints return all-world wide receiver Michael Thomas, who just destroyed defenses last year. 149 catches, 1,725 yards and 9 touchdowns. They have a solid 2-headed running back rotation, as you alluded to, Rabbi, with Alvin Kamara, who, despite there was some rumors of some trade talk, he is back. He will be playing for the Saints this year. And Latavius Murray. They combined for over 1,400 yards on the ground and 10 TDs. Kamara added 81 catches. They also returned 4 of 5 starters on an offensive line that allowed only 25 sacks last year, 3rd fewest. Granted, Brees helps that out with his ability to avoid sacks or even hits. Only happened on a little under 12% of his dropbacks, lowest of any starting quarterback. And he has the ability of that quick release of his, getting the ball out under 2.5 seconds on 47% of his dropbacks, number 2 in the league. The offense gets all the attention in New Orleans, and rightly so. But the defense has been solid. They have one of the best run defenses in the league, number 5, led by first-team All-Pro linebacker Demario Davis. Only 13th against the pass. Allen mixes up his coverages a lot. Saints played a lot of zone, though they were much better in man coverage. Like I said, they added Malcolm Jenkins to a secondary that already has Janoris Jenkins at one quarterback and Marshawn Lattimore at the other, with Swiss Army nice P.J. Williams and versatile defensive back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. The Saints are well stocked on the back end of their defense. They could use a little improvement on the pass rush. Only produced a hit or a sack on 23% of dropbacks, 7th in the league. Cam Jordan's 15.5 sacks. He's a legit guy. But they were 3rd in allowing quarterbacks to get rid of the ball and 2.5 seconds left. That's 36% of the time. Proof that the secondary had to hold its coverage for a lot longer than most secondaries. If they get some improvement in the pass rush from Marcus Davenport and Sheldon Rankins, DBs won't have to shoulder as much of that load when teams go to the air. Bottom line, guys, both sides of the ball got upgrades. Breeze has still looked like Breeze in camp. Sean Payton is still Sean Payton, and it's why they're a likely lock to win the NFC South again and get another shot at the Super Bowl, especially if you get the NFC's #1 seed, and everybody has to go through Nolans.
Whoa, lock?
I wish you saw that.
There's Tom Brady about to
I am right.
now.
The Saints, I believe they will win the NFC South.
That's fine, but you said lock.
But I am still saying.
You said lock. And this is a division that many people think is the most competitive in football. Okay, so
put down, riding and dying with it.
That's fine. That's
if I'm
fine.
wrong, I know you will tease me about it in December.
That's fine. So two things. One thing about the Saints real quickly. I know a lot of Saints fans who thought this team was actually better with Bridgewater at quarterback last year than Breeze. I think that's kind of crazy, but Breeze did show a little bit of his age, especially late in the season. Number 2, and the key to the Saints season is very simple. Avoid Minnesota in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So find a possible way to never play Minnesota in the playoffs, because that seems to be their Achilles heel.
New Orleans has suffered ever since they won that Super Bowl, they have suffered some back-breaking playoff losses. You think about Beast Quick in Seattle. You think about the Minneapolis Miracle, the missed pass interference call 2 years ago against the Rams, and last year in overtime at home to Minnesota. I mean, the Saints have really had some disheartening playoff losses. I don't know. Like I said, it could be a last stand. Like, how much more ammunition do the Saints have in the barrel right now? Yeah. They've gone through a lot.
Like I said, the NFC is one of the toughest conferences we've ever seen. And again, that's not even including the Bucs, who the hell? As I said before we move on, you could put a gun to my head and ask me how I think the Tampa Bay Bucs will do this year, and I would say I have no freaking idea. Without a training camp, God only knows. Anyway, let's go to a division that's more certain. Let's go to a conference that's more certain, and that's the AFC. The AFC has 2 surefire Super Bowl contenders. And then the obvious is first, and we'll talk about the 2 obvious ones.
Okay, flip a coin.
Anthony, the more obvious choice is?
Yeah, I get the defending Super Bowl champions. I get the double whammy. I get the 2 Super Bowl participants of a year ago. But now I'm talking about the winner. And obviously Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes leading the way. And his entire offensive weapon is coming back intact. You think about the Legion Zoom, as I mentioned earlier, with Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Malcolm Holman, DeMarcus Robinson, Brian Pringle, and you throw that in with Travis Kelce, on top of the fact that they weapon that Andy Reid gets to have on offense, and Patrick Mahomes can use either as a runner or as a receiver. Then you think about that defense with another year under Steve Spagnuolo's system. They were able to get think about this. They didn't have a solid pass rusher and was still able to get close to 50 sacks last season, which is pretty good. So in the year 2, I think I can see the more of an improvement. But like I said, you got Patrick Mahomes, and it is possible. You think about the year he's had. He's won a Super Bowl. He's won a league MVP. He's now engaged. You know, he got that.
He got a ring. He got a ring. Everybody got a ring.
Everybody
Got
gets
a ring. Both happened on the same day. He got his ring. And he gave a ring on the same day.
Yes, I mean,
That's
Patrick
meaning for the
Mahomes
praise
right
ring
now.
ceremony.
Yeah, but I think if anybody is having a good year in 2020, it's definitely Patrick Mahomes. And by the way, he has all the ketchup in the world he can eat. And I am shocked right now that he has not shown up in a Heinz ketchup commercial. But you know, Jay is kind of willing a team that has a stadium name for Heinz ketchup, so I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, I think the road to the Super Bowl in the AFC goes to Kansas City. You know, rather than a 1 seed or the 2 seed, you gotta beat the defending champions to become champion. And right now, they're as strong as ever.
Kansas City did not have the best record last year, by the way, in the AFC. Jay, Baltimore did.
Yeah, you know, and 14-2. No, I don't know about you guys. I didn't see that coming. The big question for the Ravens is, what will year 3 of the Lamar Jackson era look like? The answer, it may look much like the second year of the era. Like the Saints, the Ravens return a ton of continuity. You got the league MVP in Jackson, head coach John Harbaugh, and both his coordinators, Greg Roman on offense and Don Wink Martindale on defense, are back. The offense is 7th in terms of percentage of returning snaps, though Marshall Yanda retiring leaves a big hole in that offensive line at guard. The other 10 starters are back. The NFL's 4th most efficient defense is 13th with the loss in terms of percentage of snaps returns, with the losses of defensive back Brandon Carr and nose tackle Michael Pierce. The big question, the other big question, if you will, is whether the Titans gave everybody a blueprint on how to shut down Jackson and the Ravens offense. Tennessee stuffed the Ravens on 2 4th-and-1s, forced a Jackson fumble and an interception on back-to-back possessions, and gashed them for 217 yards on the ground. And, oh, yeah, the Ravens had 7 drops. The questions for 22, what they need to do for 2020 is obvious. Can Jackson and the young wide receiver core continue to develop? They only averaged 88.7 yards per game, last in the NFL. 12 yards per reception, 22nd. 7.8 yards per target, 19th. Marquise Brown staying healthy. He only played 51% of the snaps due to injury. Will improve things immensely. Can they replace Yanda and maintain a strong offensive line to keep their unique offense, which ranked number 1 in efficiency in the NFL, humming? And can they get more from their front 7 on defense? Greg Roman's offense runs out of multiple formations. 11, which is one running back, 1 tight end, 3 wideouts was their most popular, 44% of the time. They ran plenty of double tight ends, double running back formations. The Ravens like to use pass-catching tight end Mark Andrews and blocking tight end Nick Boyle together. They also like to line up 2 of their running backs in split shotgun or pistol looks. We all know that with Jackson leading the way with an NFL record 1,206 yards rushing by a quarterback and almost 7 yards a carry. So I was saying Mark Ingram with his 1,018 yards on 5 yards a carry. And, Rabbi, I have to say the Ravens are the best rushing attack in the NFL, considering they ran roughshod over the NFL, averaging 206 yards a game on the ground and 5.5 yards a carry, using a wide variety of runs, zones, gaps, counters, misdirections. They also called a lot of runs in which Jackson was the designated ball carrier, and others which he read defenders. They also did a really good job of using pre-snap motion. As Roman said, quote, there's nothing we're doing here that hasn't been done before. We're not inventing offense. We're just probably reinventing a little bit of how it's put together. Now, Jackson, while he may not be a finished product as a passer compared to some of the other guys around the league, Ravens were number 1 in passing efficiency, and their quarterback was number 4 in quarterback rating. His completion of percentage above expectation, which I explained previously, was only 12th out of the 39 quarterbacks, but that was a huge improvement over his rookie season when he was 36th of 39. Helped that his pass catchers had the 2nd lowest drop rate in the NFL, and Jackson's decision-making also improved, produced a negative result, interception, sack, or fumble on just 6% of the plays in which he had the ball. That was 5th lowest among starters. As I said at the top, if the wide receivers can produce at a level similar to Mark Andrews, their tight end, Ravens will be a true dual-threat offense. Defense was solid, 4th against the pass, 20th against the run, which is impressive when you consider that only the Jets' defense suffered worse injury luck than the Ravens did last season. Situationally, they were 8th in the red zone and 5th in short yardage. So how do you explain what the Titans did to them in the playoffs? Well, Football Outsiders uses a metric called adjusted line yards to measure how defensive lines perform against the run. The Ravens ranked 10th. And at the second level, where your linebackers and your strong safety is, if he's a box safety, the Ravens ranked 16th. But where they really got gashed was in the open field, defined as 10 yards or more past the line of scrimmage. They ranked 29th in open field yards, suggesting that their defensive secondary did an awful job as the last line of defense, and there's your explanation. Luckily for the Ravens, few teams can run the ball like the Titans. Look, the Ravens' pass defense is better than their run defense, and in a pass-heavy league, that's a plus. They have solid corners in Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters, and they're one of the best at defending wide receivers and did a good job against tight ends and running back. Bottom line, Ravens are a difficult defense to prepare for. From a pass protection standpoint, they have multiple fronts, and Martindale loves to blitz from anytime, anywhere. They added Calais Campbell on the defensive line, added Derek Wolfe at linebacker, should help with the rush, and Patrick Queen should make them better in coverage. And I am among the school who agrees that getting rid of Earl Thomas is addition by subtraction, as he was a cancer in the locker room. I'm not going to pencil the Ravens in for another 14-2 season, not with Big Ben healthy and back under center for the Steelers, which could give them an offense that is as good as their defense. But I do think the AFC North goes through B-more, and they can secure the number one. And if they can secure the number one seed and force the Chiefs and everybody else to come to their nest, they have a better than good chance at being the NFC rep in the Super Bowl.
It's weird, though, because with no fans this year, I don't know what the real definition of home field advantage is, because Kansas City lives off of their home field. Baltimore lives off of their fans. And all it means, to me at least, is a
weather.
Another place. Weather, maybe. But I mean, Kansas City and Baltimore cancel each other out.
Weather can be the one thing that gives a team an advantage. If you have a team that does not traditionally play end-of-the-season games in weather, going to a team that traditionally does and is better situated to play those types of games.
No, that's true. That's true. But
give the team an advantage.
That's true. But the one thing about Kansas City is they have because we're really looking at Baltimore and Kansas City here. They have creation of every type of offense, even with their running game, which you would think is their weakness. But honestly, they make it work very well. Okay. So I get the dartboard. So what I did is I took other teams, threw a dart, and I came up with 3 choices. And I'll leave the Steelers, which is one of them, for last, because we'll have a little discussion about them quickly. Tennessee is my first, because I think they're the best team in the AFC South, given I know Indianapolis has Rivers, but they still have a lot of holes in their defense.
Does Jacksonville still have a team right now? Because they're just giving it to everybody.
Jacksonville is the team.
No, Jacksonville does not have a team.
I wasn't even
talking about Little Duval, the comedian, next week for running back at some point.
Yeah. Who's line is it anyway situation. And obviously Houston gave up the best wide receiver in the NFL, so we won't talk about that.
Dumbass.
Yeah. Titans, they have almost their entire offense back, and they really had a great performance in their final 10 games, plus the playoffs in 2019. Ryan Tannehill got a big extension in the offseason, and I don't know if he deserves it, but he definitely is a force that stabilizes this team, allow them to move on from Marcus Mariota. And if you get what you've been getting from Derrick Henry over these last 2 years, if you get beast mode Derrick Henry that he was in the playoffs, especially against New England and Baltimore, you're getting an offense that is as old school as any of the others in the entire league. And they really outrushed Baltimore in the game that they played in that AFC divisional round game. So Derrick Henry is one of the best weapons in football by far, and he can easily show it for a 16-game season. The defense is a little tricky. They lost a lot of people in the offseason, but they gained Vic Beasley, and Vic Beasley is a beast at the outside linebacker position. And let's see what happens with that defense. Tennessee is a team to watch. Also,
you know what, Rabbi, I kind of raised my eyebrow at you when you told me that's where you were leaning. But, when you break it down, on paper, you would appear to be right. The big question for me is, can Henry and Tannehill reprise their performances? Because Tannehill needs Henry to be in full beast mode to make the play-action game, which is Tannehill's forte, work at the level it did in the playoff game. They need that 16. They need that all 16 games if they're going to do what you think they can.
Yeah, and Jay, you mentioned too. Think about that playoff game against New England. what Derrick Henry able to get off and how big the play action pass was as far as getting the shots downfield from Ryan Tannehill. Derrick Henry reminds me a lot of Earl Campbell. I mean,
yes.
I mean, if he has a lot of sprint speed, but if you want to hit him, good luck because this
not
guy,
going down.
Yeah, he's literally among the league leaders in yards after the first contact, and it seems like every year. Yeah, it seems like every year he has a highlight reel run against the Jaguars on Thursday Night Football, which I'm quite sure Jacksonville is begging the NFL, don't schedule us against Tennessee ever again on Thursday nights.
Yeah, they would prefer if they weren't scheduled against Tennessee on any night.
Well, they have to play them because they're in division.
I know.
So that's team number one. Team number two is New England. Because of Belichick's history and Cam Newton, I know he is 5 years removed now. Jesus, 5 years removed from his MVP season. But if he can smother up, or smudging up, I don't remember how you could say that word. I don't care. If he can really just yes, if he can do half or 3/4 of what he did in that season and kind of bring a winning attitude back to New England could be on pace to at least be the third best team in the AFC. And then
Rabbi, if he does that alone makes him the best quarterback in the AFC East.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do much worse than Cam Newton. And again, we're about to see if it's the chicken, Tom Brady, or the egg, Bill Belichick, that really laid the foundation for all of this run that they've had over the years.
Yep.
We'll see what happens with New England. But now let's get to Pittsburgh. And honestly, when you mentioned that they could give Baltimore a run, they had 2 tough games against Baltimore last year that could have gone either way. And the division, who knows if Baltimore goes on that 14-2 run last year, if Pittsburgh gives them a little bit to handle. Almost everybody on that team underperformed last year when Big Ben got injured for the season in week 2.
Yeah.
I expect a much better Juju Smith-Schuster. The wide receivers, after the number 2 wide receiver, it's going to be a competition in that spot. But
actually it's not.
Is it Washington?
I'll tell you right. No. Deontay Johnson's going to be the second guy starting alongside Schuster. Washington's going to get his chances, but I got to tell you, as much as I initially was not enamored of them drafting the kid out of Notre Dame, Claypool has impressed everyone.
Okay.
And you throw in the addition of Eric Ebron as a receiver at tight end. This team has a lot
of weapons. They have a lot of weapons.
And Ben is back. And look, let's put it
let me talk.
Now. His elbow is fine. He feels like he did 4 years ago before he started feeling pain. He's slinging the ball all over Heinz Field. Everybody, I'm telling you, he was the missing link. And you put him back under center with the defense that they had last year, which returns pretty much everybody, especially Stephen Tuitt from injury on that D-line. Do I think they can take the AFC North?
I don't know if they can take the AFC North, but I think
they get a wild card, especially in a year where there's 3 of them. Oh, hell yeah.
I think they can.
In the playoffs, Rabbi, anything can happen.
I think they can make a huge run, and if Big Ben gets back to form, and yes, the elbow is perfectly fine. I know I was mentioning before, Drew Brees is getting old. Obviously, Big Ben is kind of at that same level of age. But this could be a surprise. I don't even want to say the Steelers are a surprise team, but this could be a little bit of a surprise 10-11 win team that makes a run.
You know what?
They even get classified as a surprise is based on what they did last year.
Yeah, and again, anybody outside of the Ravens and the Chiefs doing something is a surprise right now because it's that we mentioned before. You have the top 2 and everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah, you know what? It would be a surprise to me to see the Steelers make the playoffs or even compete for the AFC North. You talk about the playoffs, but it always come down to coaching. And I always feel like Mike Tomlin is one of the elite coaches in the league year in and year out. He always have his teams well prepared, whether they're fully healthy or it's next man out. We saw them play hard last year. And maybe, a couple of breaks that would have gone their way, they probably get into the playoffs. You think about this.
Duck Hodges can't make because of who they are and where they are that Ben makes on the regular. is the
Yeah, you think about this. The Steelers was really one bad performance at MetLife Stadium against the Jets.
Yeah, they would have been a playoff team. They would have been a team in the outside of Tennessee.
And they went from a team controlling their own destiny to a team that needed help to get in, whether they win or not. And it really didn't matter when they did win their last game of the season because they were all but eliminated. So, like I said, Mike Tomlin is one league coach. He's going to have his team prepared. He's going to have his team disciplined, ready to go. And like I said, we talked about the Giants' schedule. Like, I'm not looking forward exactly to starting the season against that Steelers team fully healthy.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me if they make the playoffs, especially when you now have an extra wild card in each division, in each conference.
That is it, because we need to move on because it's 11:26. All right, so prediction time. We always make predictions, and then you or each of us laugh at said predictions when we get to December. So, as the analysts and hosts that we are, we're going to still do that. Jay, who do you pick for Super Bowl 55 in the Big Sombrero?
Out of the AFC East, out of the AFC period, I'll start there. I'm not prone to picking defending champs to return to the Super Bowl because we all know how hard it is. It's been to get back. But, I agree with the way Anthony broke them down, and I think the Chiefs do have the best chance of any recent champ to change that paradigm. I mean, we can't expect them to have those remarkable comebacks again, but I still think the AFC will go through Kansas City, and they're tough on their home turf, and now they have the experience of last year's playoffs and will know how to handle their business. I won't get into the rest of it because Anthony said it perfectly. On the NFC side, I'm riding with the Saints again, breaking my own rule of not picking the same team 2 years in a row. So I'm actually doing it in both cases. They were this close 2 years in a row, and I think the third time will be the charm for all the reasons I mentioned in our NFC Contenders segment. They just need a couple of balls and calls to go their way this season, along with the ridiculous numbers this offense can put up. And Breeze and Peyton will be Breeze and Peyton, and I think they got a really good shot at getting another ring.
Anthony?
Okay, for me in the AFC, I'm going with Kansas City. I mean, like I said, outside of Baltimore, I really don't see any team that can go in the Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs, whether there's a sea of red in the stands or not. Kansas City is just a tough team to beat, and they're literally the same team coming back from winning the Super Bowl just several months ago. In the NFC, wow, I was kind of picking my brain on this one, but you know what? I'm going to go on a limb. We never had a team play a home game in the Super Bowl. We're going to have one this year. I'm going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They'll be the home team because the Super Bowl will be in their backyard. They'll be the designated home team because
no fans,
it's the NFC's turn to be the home team this season after the AFC was the home team last year in Miami. So I'm going Chiefs, Buccaneers. You're going to have Tom Brady against Patrick Mahomes round 2 in the postseason. I can't wait for that.
Oh, I was thinking of that. Okay, so you know what? It's the NFL. It's not that easy. I'm not going to make it a clean sweep for the Chiefs. I would have probably, if I went first, say the Chiefs. I'll pick the Ravens because I think a lot of people expect a little bit of a fall. I think a lot of people expect
big trust
fall off. I wouldn't be surprised if they're only at 12. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're this year's Kansas City Chiefs, a team that maybe finishes second or third in the AFC and then kind of focuses on the playoffs a little bit more because Lamar Jackson has had those 2 playoff failures in a row at home. I would not be surprised if Baltimore kind of puts it together and even wins a AFC championship at KC. I think it'll be Baltimore at KC in the AFC championship with Baltimore winning, but it's so close. I was racking my brain on the NFC, and I will go with the team that I originally picked for that segment, Seattle. We've had the NFC West represented in the last 2 Super Bowls. I think it's Seattle's turn. You can really, again, throw a dart in this situation. I think New Orleans, I think Breeze has just made too many mistakes. I think San Francisco needs better play from Garoppolo. I was very close to picking Arizona, believe it or not.
Really?
I was very close to picking Arizona because we've had NFC teams pretty much come out of nowhere over the last few years. Atlanta was a team that kind of came out of nowhere for Super Bowl 51. The Eagles were 6-10. going and coming out of nowhere for Super Bowl 52. The Rams were only like 1 year into their rebuilding plan, and they got to Super Bowl 53. And San Francisco was a 6-10 team getting into Super Bowl 54. I think we go a little more chalk this year because of the fact that we don't have a preseason to really gauge teams. But I think the right play here, Russell Wilson has championship experience. He'll get back to the Super Bowl. So I'm picking Baltimore and Seattle. But I will hedge my bet a little bit that says if you see Arizona as a 12-4 or 13-3 team, don't be surprised. Can't wait for this season, and let's hope they get through it. That's
yeah. You know what?
Okay. So the good news for the New York Islanders is they've actually gotten a point in their last 6 consecutive games. The bad news is if you lose in overtime, you lose a game. So that's why the Islanders right now are at 3-3 in their series versus the Philadelphia Flyers. They've lost all 3 of their games 2, 5, and 6 in overtime. And Saturday night at 7:30, they'll be playing their game 7 for a chance to go to their first Stanley Cup Eastern Conference Final in 27 years. So let's quickly, as we are running out of time, go over what we see as the key to them in Game 7. Anthony, how can the Islanders end up making that flight from Toronto to Edmonton for the Final Four?
Oh, you know what? They got to get out to better starts. I mean, the last few games, they've got out to slow starts. In Game 6 tonight, and you know what? I got to give a shout-out to Oscar Lindblom coming back from playing his first game back after being diagnosed with cancer. That was a huge emotional lift for the Philadelphia Flyers, obviously. But the Islanders have fallen behind in 2 of the last 3 games and continue to play catch-up. And that goes away from Barry Trotz's style and the tempo that this team wants to play. They want to play with a lead. They want to play physical. They want to play discipline. 2 of the goals they gave up in the first period tonight were caused by neutral zone turnovers and just lack of discipline. And then Islanders are kind of shooting themselves in the foot. You think about this, they outshot the Flyers by a wide margin, 53-31.
Basically 60-20.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and you look at the total amount of shots. The Islanders is well over 100 total shots. That, you know, when you combine that and the shots on goal, but I got to, and Rabbi, you probably touched on this. We got to look at the goaltender because Varlamov struggled tonight in the same way he struggled early in the series, giving up two early goals. And Barry Trotz had that look like he was going to make the goalie change to Thomas Greiss, did not, stuck with him. Now you got to think about going to do it that Game 7 if he sticks with Varlamov or go with Thomas Greiss. And you know, try to show up that goalie situation because, you know, you think about it, Varlamov, as good as he's playing, he has not faced a lot of shots on net going into the series. And the Flyers, for their parts, haven't really peppered him with shots as much as they've been able to get shots through traffic, and in situations, well, in Kevin Hayes' case earlier, getting shots in the high slot, where Varlamov is very susceptible, especially high and glove side. So Barry Trotz got his homework to do the next 48 hours to figure out how exactly he's going to get this team to get out to start, you know, get a better start, because the Islanders are not a good team. They came back tonight, but they're not a good team as far as when they have to play catch up, like spend an entire 30, 40 minutes on end trying to catch up after they've fallen behind early in games.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, they have continuously of late put themselves in holes that they have just been unable to dig out of. I mean, we talked about this in the production meeting, guys. We can't for the life of us figure out why Trotz has not yanked Varlamov in favor of Greiss just to shake things up. But the thing that, you know, you got to talk about is that the Flyers' big guns have finally started to come to play, which they were not doing in the first half of the series. They were missing in action. You're talking about guys like Giroux, like Van Riemsdyk. They were not getting to the net. They were not putting points on the board the first 3 games. Over the last 3 games, they have done so. And at the end of the day, on pure talent alone, Philadelphia is a more talented team. And if you let that talent play its A game every night, no matter how disciplined the Islanders are, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, it's a tough decision to yank Varlamov now because Greiss has only played one postseason game, and he played it really because it was a back-to-back. But he started that game. He actually was kind of sometimes the linchpin for getting goals on the other end. He's played playoff games before. I think Varlamov was really good, but then the Philadelphia Flyers realized if you go to his right, he doesn't really do that as good as he goes to his left. And that's kind of one of the reasons why the Flyers have already started to break out. It's a very tough decision for Trotz. Like I said, I think if you went to Greiss in game 6, and I think it would be a lot easier, you could have Varlamov for game 7. But now it's, do you go with basically the reliever who's good, but only has really pitched 3 innings over the last 20 games? Or do you go with the guy who you get a good outing from, but might give up the home run? And that home run will get you kicked out of the playoffs. I think again, and I also agree, the Flyers are the more talented team, but in the beginning of the series, the Islanders had more playoff experience, which is almost a rarity for the Islanders to have over their opponents. This game 7 is going to be interesting. I think the Flyers have a huge advantage because they have the momentum. But again, if you're the Islanders, you take solace knowing in the fact that after 60 minutes of every single game, you did not lose. You lost in overtime in all 3 of those games. And that's what makes this the ultimate toss-up game 7.
Yeah, and honestly, guys, I think it's going to come down to what I've been harping on the entire playoff season for the Islanders, and it's the special teams and keeping opponents at 5-on-5. Now, the Islanders have won the special teams battle so far in this series. Granted, they were only 1 for 6 on the power play tonight, but they were perfect on the penalty kill. For this series, the Islanders are 4 for 19 on the power play, which is 21%. Still a little bit above their season average, but they are a perfect 100% on the penalty kill, shutting down all 13 of the Flyers' power plays. The thing with this is that now normally that puts them in great position because what's been their strength all year? Winning the battle at 5-on-5. They have been struggling of that at late, and especially tonight in Game 6, and it's what did them in. Coming even strength goals coming into tonight's game, the Islanders they were +2, 13 goals, they'd allowed 11. In the overall in the playoffs, they had scored 30 goals at even strength, only allowing 16. They gave up 5 even strength goals tonight. All of the Flyers' goals were at even strength, which is usually the strength that the Islanders use to dictate the flow of a game and ultimately leading to a win. At the end of the day, they are going to have to do better in terms of winning the battle at even strength. Or at the end, bottom line though, all that being said, guys, to me, it's going to be a simple thing for the Islanders in Game 7. Just don't let the game go to overtime.
Yeah, there you go.
Regulation.
And considering that they're +14 in third period goals, that should be enough. Come on, guys.
Oh, we'll see what happens.
It's going to come down to the coaching, too. I want to see what Barry Trotz, can he get this team going back to playing disciplined hockey and not making these silly mistakes that led to the early goals and even the overtime goal on a broken stick, no less. On a pass of blue line. But you think about the Flyers coach, Lee Vigneault, being down 3-1 in the series, he's been there more than once. And we all know as Ranger fans, he has the experience to bring his team back from a 3-1 deficit. He got the star players stepping up, and it's going to be an interesting game Saturday night.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's funny. I was like, every series in the NHL second round was at 3-1. And one team, we might have 3 Game 7s now. Vancouver just scored, so they're up 2-0. Colorado's gone to a Game 7. You need to close out your opponents when you do. That's what Tampa Bay did to Boston, and they're the only team right now who is in the conference finals. And by the way, we're not on next week because we're going to let everybody enjoy the NFL season opener. But Tampa Bay is a team on a mission. They remind me of Virginia from 2019. They're a
Yes.
team that got embarrassed the year before, and now that's their motivation for the run that they're having right now. I don't think anybody's beating Tampa Bay.
No, that's a perfect analogy, because what happened in Tampa Bay last year is the equivalent of a 16 knocking off a 1 in the NCAA tournament.
Wait, you mean it's not Kenan Thompson making fun of them at the NA show?
Oh, no. That's not happening anymore. That's not happening anymore. That Tampa Bay team is dangerous. But that does it for this week's edition of On the Sports Lines. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, my name is Steven Rabinowitz. We are on every Thursday night at facebook.com/onthesportslines at around 9:30. We're on demand at the rest of the week at youtube.com/onthesportslines and on Twitter at ONTH Sportslines. That's right. I'm saying it this week. We wish everyone
Rabbi, let's once again give thanks to our good
Oh,
buddy.
yeah. I'm sorry about that. Joe Tufaro, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You can find him again on Twitter at ToughDan. You can also find him on Instagram at ToughDan, around all platforms. Again, everybody, for Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, my name is Steven Rabinowitz. We will see you in 2 weeks when we will be close to a possible NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals preview. Good God almighty. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, guys.